chance. I dropped a cigarette and didn't notice, and the door locked from the outside. I couldn't find the key. Thank you so much for saving me. I'm Teresa Mesbit, by the way.
Hercule Poirot.
The famous detective?
Why, yes.
It's so great to meet you. I wish I could repay you somehow. Give me your address and I will pay you with a gift.
That is really not necessary.
I always heard you loved hot chocolate. I know a place in London that sells Belgian hot chocolate. I would like to get you some.
Well, if you insist.
So who are our new tenants?
Well, they are Mrs. Angela Blunt and her stepdaughter Jessica. Her husband, Jeffrey Blunt, died last year. They were only married 2 years in total. Mr. Blunt did something with diamonds in South America. Mrs. Blunt and he apparently met in Argentina while she was working in some house as a maid. He was quite taken with her, it seems.
I see, and they are hosting a dinner party tonight to celebrate the end of the war?
But be careful. Mrs. Blunt is a mean-spirited woman.
Yes, and I understand they've invited 2 dinner guests. Both very famous, even though I've never heard of them before. Mrs. Ariadne Oliver, a murder mystery writer, and Mr. Henry Patterson, a stage actor who's been reading all of the lead parts, even though he's become very ill and is wheelchair-bound. And yet, before today, I've never heard of them.
When was the last time that you picked up a piece of fiction or went to the theater?
I quite enjoyed your latest play.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind of you.
I hated it. I thought it was god-awful. Oh, and that last book of yours, Miss Oliver, The Butler Did It? That was a horrible ending.
If you read to the end, you would know that is not what really happened.
And what are you snorting at?
Nothing, I do apologize.
And you, that play starring you, it was terrible. And the leading lady, hideous, horrendous actress.
Look who's talking.
What was that?
Nothing but me singing your praises, my dear.
Don't you give me a standing ovation.
May God have mercy on your soul.
Now what was that supposed to mean?
I thought the meaning was perfectly clear.
I will get it. Mademoiselle, you have saved me from the most disagreeable part.
I'm glad you all enjoyed this hot chocolate.
Call a doctor! She's having some sort of seizure!
It is good of you to come so promptly, Chief Inspector.
Of course. You think it was poison?
Right, that's exactly. In fact, Chief Inspector, I would have been happy to do the act myself.
Who stands to gain by her death?
My understanding is that her stepdaughter Jessica inherits everything in the event of her death.
So she's the prime suspect?
She's just a child, Jap. Yes, her stepmother was a horrible woman, but I doubt that she decided to kill her. Besides, where would she get the poison?
Don't know. But the woman's estate is worth a fortune, right? Didn't her husband do something with diamonds in South America?
Yes, he did.
You think of something?
Well, it is just this. I would like to know more about her. I'd like to know what she was doing in Argentina before she met her husband. How they met, and what happened in the country while she was there.
I hope you don't think you can take advantage of me in my current position. I just want my money. I did what you asked, and all I want is my money. When will I get it?
Poirot, there's been another murder. Patterson. He's been shot to death.
It is not all that unexpected. He murdered his wife a few years ago for her money, and then he resorts to drink. His play fails. His health fails. I went to see his play, you know, after Miss Lamont told me about it.
Did you now? How was it?
Abysmal. Mrs. Blunt was correct in that respect. I would like to talk with each of them one last time, and then, I think, I will know everything.
How?
I told Hastings about the case. He sent me a letter. You recall he moved to Argentina, and he told me something very interesting.
What is it?
It appears that a man died in Argentina 4 years ago. The wife was blamed publicly but never charged. She fled the country before they could. Mrs. Blunt was working in the house as a maid that day the man died. She told the police that she saw the wife with the poison, and so the wife fled the country. Do you know what the newspapers called her? The Black Widow. This is the card from the body. The Black Widow's name has certainly been changed since then, I think, but I think we may have found her.
But do you know who the murderer is?
I do.
Does it have anything to do with this killing in Argentina?
I think it has everything to do with the killing in Argentina.
You like her?
No. Did you?
I didn't like her. It was a shock when I realized she was dead, but I hated her.
How did your father die?
He became ill over time, but I came to suspect foul play. I wondered if my stepmother could possibly be behind it. He always seemed worse after he ate. I didn't know what to do. I wish I had gone to the police. At least I would have him. I told him he thought I was being silly.
Yes. I think you have a very acute assessment of your stepmother, and I think that you are correct.
I was never sure if she was a murderer, but I hated her. I wish she had died instead of my father.
It's a very nice puzzle, I must say.
I suppose.
Was it Patterson, Mr. Poirot? Did he kill her?
I believe he did.
Then it was suicide.
Of that, I am not sure. Shall I be seeing this as the plot of your next novel?
Possibly. I'm not sure.
What is his motive?
I don't know. Didn't really think of that. Everyone has a motive some way, somehow. I suppose in fiction. And the killer is always someone you don't think of. I will have to add more characters to take the suspicion off him if I do write it.
Good luck. I don't think that I shall condemn you.
Excuse me?
Chief Inspector Jepp and our mystery writer were both perfectly willing to buy that Mr. Patterson murdered Mrs. Blunt alone. And certainly he administered the poison to her glass. But I don't believe it. I think that there is a much different motive for Mrs. Blunt's murder.
I'm sure I don't know what you mean.
You can drop the act, Miss Nesbit, but that is not your real name. You were married in Argentina. You had a large estate. You had a fortune in diamonds with your husband and Mr. Blunt. But then the future Mrs. Blunt came along, as a maid in your household. She stole some of the diamonds from your house, and then your husband discovered what she was doing, and so he had to die. And then she framed you. You were afraid. You fled the country because you knew that Mrs. Blunt was the murderer, and that no one would believe that you were not. And she seemed to have no reason to have done so. Mr. Blunt met his wife soon after you left the country. They married, and she became the stand-in mother for young Jessica. You came to Britain. You made a new life. You lived a meager existence, but then you found that the woman who ruined your life was living in London. She was fabulously wealthy, living on the money of a man she murdered, 2 of them. You couldn't take it. You met Mr. Patterson. He didn't have enough money to get by. His play was a disaster. His health was failing, and so you offered him a lot of money to murder Angela Blunt for you.
I don't have that kind of money.
Which is why Mr. Patterson had to die. Killing changes a person. I feel that that is punishment enough. You stepped in as vigilante. I would turn you in if Patterson had not murdered his wife. that you killed 2 murderers who would have gotten away with it if not for you. I'm not going to turn you in.
Stop pretending. You don't have any evidence. That's why you're letting me walk.
Killing changes you. You will not swing for your crimes. But I think that you are a moral person. The guilt will hurt you. I am disappointed you brought me into your plans. You staged the fire so that you could get me out of the room, or you had Patterson administer the poison. You planned it out. And that is why I was suspicious of you immediately.
You really aren't going to turn me in?
No.
Goodbye, Mr. Poirot, and thank you.
Goodbye, Miss Nesbit.
Jessica's asleep. She seems better.
When she decides to leave us, I don't think that we should rent out the upstairs flat.
Why?
Apparently it is dangerous to the tenant.
Well, if you insist.
Yay!
Yay, I'm not in the shadow, huh?
Your face didn't light up.
Ah! I am Hercule Poirot's twin brother, Mercure. Nobody suspected that I was actually the murderer. They just blindly believe who I say it is. It is! Go, Luke.